Welcome to Listening to Paint Dry with Mike and Dan, a podcast about the art and hobby of miniature painting. I'm Mike.
And I'm Dan. Thank you for joining us as we strive to become better, braver, happier painters. Well, Mike, looks like it's finally going to happen. We're going to be the ones being interviewed.
Oh man, it's going to be so weird. I mean, even worse, we might have to be on camera too. And I got to tell you, I look great on radio. Can't guarantee what happens on camera.
So why did we agree to this again?
No, man, what were you thinking? But yeah, actually, it should be a lot of fun. I mean, we're going into a friendly environment. We're going to be on the Crow's Nest, hosted by Michael Proctor of Clever Crow Studios and Jason Wiebe, who's an amazing sculptor, and he's also pretty well known. It's hosted on the Reaper Twitch channel.
That's right. We'll be on their show on Tuesday, April 13th at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's 6 p.m. in the real world.
Eastern Standard Time. I have to say that because I need to remind myself too. And as an added bonus, we've actually invited Michael back on our show, and he's going to talk to what we talk about is how his show is going.
And I'm actually on an interview too. So without further ado, we are pleased to present Michael Proctor of Clever Crow Studios.
Michael, thank you so much for returning to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
This is interview 2.1 because when we did the first one, let's just say a certain platform designed originally for video games decided that it didn't want to record. It was probably user error, so my apologies. And again, thank you so much for your patience, Michael.
Oh, no worries. No problem at all.
And also this time in the second interview, we have Dan with us.
Hi, everybody. So actually, if we keep this going, it might be like two Mikes, one Dan show or something.
Right. Listening to Paint Dry with Michael, Mike, and Dan.
All right. So let's kick all this off here. As Mike said, thanks to the other Mike. We need to come up with like Mike 1 and Mike 2 or Michael or something like that.
No, just call him Michael and me Mike.
Okay, so yes, that's what I will do. So thanks a lot, Michael, for joining us. So I've heard there's quite a bit of news going on with Clever Crow Studios, but first we want to hear about what else is going on with your new addition to your family.
Yeah, we brought into our family a golden retriever puppy. Her name's Miko. She is now just turning 5 months tomorrow. So we've had her for 3 months. So we got her right as December started. And she has gone from maybe 12 pounds and she's getting close to 40 pounds already. She is growing so fast. She's huge. But yeah, she's a blast. She's fantastic. She's been a great addition. It's just my wife and I at the house, and we both work from home. And, with everything that's going on, it's not like we're traveling a ton. So it was a great opportunity to bring another puppers back into the family. And she's been on a lot of the streaming episodes. She's been in a lot of the Reaper stuff that I do. She does a lot of cameo appearances.
And it's amazing, some of all the downsides of the pandemic that have gone on. One of the plus signs that I've seen is that so many people have adopted pets and that shelters are actually getting cleared out and such like that. So, I think this might have been a plot by dogs around the world to keep humans home.
Maybe. Yeah, we ended up getting Miko's a golden retriever, if I didn't say it earlier, and we did end up getting her from a breeder. We've had multiple golden retrievers before, but when the pandemic was going on, we did want to get another golden. We couldn't find one, and we looked through the shelters for rescues, and we were looking for a bigger dog, some kind of golden retriever mix or something like that, and you couldn't. Everything was gone. All the pups were gone, so that's good news, I guess. But yeah, so finally we were just kind of giving up, and then we got a lady reached out to us that we knew we had contacted long before the pandemic started. So it was just kind of fate at that point where we kind of given up, kind of like we were just going to wait, and then she reached out, and yeah, it was just all meant to be.
Perfect. That's awesome. You know, I could talk dogs all day, but you know, I guess we gotta get to the painting side.
Right.
So the other big thing that happened after our very first interview, I believe, which was released back in February of last year, was you started a Twitch show.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So tell us how that came to be.
Yeah, so I had Reaper. I was out at Reaper October of year before last, so 15 plus months ago, and we had done a couple of painting tutorial videos. Reaper just set up their studio. They'd started doing some Twitch broadcasting, Reaper Live in particular, and they had started a little toolbox session where myself, Rhonda, and Forrester, other folks had just shot little tutorial videos. And in one of those, Brother Dave, one of the co-owners of Reaper, came up to me and said, "Hey, we want to do we're start doing more weekly shows. Would you be interested?" I'm like, I don't know. And of course, this was right before the pandemic, and I'm like, yeah, why not? We'll think about it. And I really didn't think much was going to happen from it afterwards. Sometimes ideas pop up and never come to realization. But as we got closer and I think we actually started doing shows in mid to late March, and that's when the pandemic hit. And Justin with Reaper reached out and said, "Let's do it." So they sent me some equipment, and we set it up. And while that was all in process, I started watching various painting of Twitch shows, and really everything was already, I don't know, in my opinion, so many people were doing painting shows, and they already had a number of painting shows. So Justin and I were just kind of talking about what could we do that's just a little bit different. So we kind of came up with the formulation of the idea was paint clubs. When you go and get your friends together, it's non-pandemic times, and you can go meet on a Saturday, and everybody can meet at a game store or whatever, and hang out and just talk about what's going on. And you're always focused on the hobby and talking about things, and maybe you're meeting new people. So that was kind of the idea, and it took a little bit. Our very first show was just me painting because we were still trying to figure out what to do, but we also, with Reaper, we would do these informal kind of artist cons, where myself and Rhonda Bender and Jen Greenwald and the sculptors and Bobby Jackson and Gene Van Horn, Jason Wiebe, we'll talk about Jason a little bit more in a second, and Bob and Julie, Rob Adolfi and Julie Guthrie, and a few others. We'll get together maybe once or twice a year and just hang out for a week at Reaper and paint and sculpt and stuff like that. So with the pandemic going on and us not being able to do that, I thought it would be a good opportunity to try to reconnect with the friends and everything during that time. So we started me doing a painting show with me and Justin, and then we started having guests. And I think my very first guest, who was my first guest? I don't know if I think that might have been Bobby Jackson. Was maybe my first guest. I can't remember. But we've had Bobby on, we've had Gene Van Horn, and it's really a chance for me to hang out, talk to them, and it was kind of ended up being an interview show, but it was more of just hanging out and talking and reconnecting, and it really helped me personally through the lockdown time. So it started and just started going from there, and I honestly thought I'll do a few of these. No one will like them, and I'll stop doing them, and it'll be over, and I can check that box. But people I think they liked it, and it's been a nice distraction. We get pretty good viewership on the time that we're streaming, but we get a lot of follow-up people watching afterwards. So it's been good. It's been good, and it's been good to reconnect. And we did that for a while, and I'm kind of rambling here, but I wanted to make sure there was a point where it became a lot of work, and I have a kind of a regular gig job where I have to focus all the time. But then I wanted to make sure I'm dedicating some prep time to the show, and I asked Jason Wiebe, who had been on a number of times. And in one episode, I had Jason on, and we couldn't think about what to do, so Jason interviewed me, and that was kind of nice. I hadn't been on the other side of it. And then right after that show, as soon as we finished that show, I was like, no brainer, Jason, I want you to come on with me and interview. And I was kind of you guys actually, the two of you doing the interviews together is what kind of made me think I shouldn't do this alone. I should have a sidekick, and somebody to help with the questions. And because Jason has a totally different take on questions and ideas and just a mental process than me. So it's been a lot of fun.
Well, when you first started, even though you were interviewing and doing these streams with people that you knew, were you kind of nervous doing that?
Totally. I remember the very first show. Is I thought there was so much dead air. I mean, I purposefully scheduled people that I, were really close friends with, so at least that wasn't an issue, right? That wasn't like, I don't know this person well enough. I don't know what questions to ask them. That was fine, but I don't know. I was just really self-aware of looking like a moron. So after the first show, I got on air with Justin afterwards. I'm like, that sucked. I don't want to do it again. That was so horrible. And he goes, no, it really wasn't. He goes, go back and listen to it again. And I thought there was all this dead air, and there really wasn't. And it seemed to flow. And I think as time went on, my questions maybe got a little bit better. I have Rhonda Bender and Jen Greenwald. I will, if I have some guest on that they know or they're familiar with, we'll kind of brainstorm questions. So not all the questions are coming out of my little model brain.
No, I mean, I gotta say, you do a really good job. I mean, that's I'm very impressed with the questions that you and Jason ask. And I actually model. I've watched a few, and I'm like, I need to ask that of guests as well. So thank you.
Yeah, we try to stick. We want to, and especially as we've gone along, I always want to, if it's that guest first time on, I want to do an origin story for them. Why are you in this hobby? What got you into it? Why are you, why are you so passionate about miniature, either sculpting, painting, or what have you? I want to hear that story myself, but I think it helps a lot of other folks going, yeah, I did that, or wow, I never thought of that. That's really what. Oh yeah, I remember those old Grenadier miniatures or Raoul Partha miniatures or Poly S paints or whatever. So that's kind of nice to talk about those things too. And then with Jason, he's just got such a wealth of knowledge, and where I can bring in the history and my experiences with painting. We've had a number of great sculptors on, and Jason's great, and he can walk down that sculpting road with them.
So I guess the follow-on with that is kind of how do you guys develop content? Like, do you have a process, or is it? And if it's there is no process, that's awesome too.
Reaper's hashtag that they use for Reaper Live is hashtag We Aren't Professionals. That does trickle down to our show as well. It is us texting back and forth. Hey, who do you want on next week? I don't know. Do you got anybody you want on? What about this person?
Sounds so familiar.
You're right, exactly.
What about this person? Oh, okay. Do you want to ask him? Yeah, I'll ask him. Oh crap, that person can't do it this week. Okay, well let's do it. Let's and it ends up looking like we've planned something, but we're usually sending out invites, Thursday, Friday of that week, maybe Monday, Tuesday. We've had Gene on a few times, and Gene Van Horn's a really super close friend. We're roomies at cons and stuff like that. But his joke is, "What? Couldn't you get anybody else?" So he thinks he's our default, and I won't admit to that. I will not admit to that, I should say.
That sounds so familiar, Dan. I mean,
oh yeah, I'm like cracking up over here. That's exactly like what our conversations are.
Yeah, and we want to, with a lot of these folks, initially, there's the core folks that, we're getting mostly Reaper folks that are watching our streams because it's on the Reaper Twitch channel, but and a lot of the sculptors and painters that are, quote unquote, they're commissioned or staff painters or sculptors or whatever, they're go-to folks. But then we wanted to reach out and a little bit deeper into the community and maybe hit some painters that we know really well, but that the community don't know as well, and give them examples. And then other ones that have maybe started off their little sideline businesses, or they have Patreons, or they have blogs or whatever. We're trying to turn the show into not just about us talking about Reaper stuff, but let's bring some guests on and talk about their stuff too. We had Tom Mason on last week. Tom's been sculpting for years, but maybe not as many people know his name, but he has a ton of credits, not only with Reaper, but with a number of other companies, and he's done his own Kickstarters as well. So it was fun to plug his Kickstarters and to see, in the comments of the Twitch stream, everybody going, "Oh yeah, I remember that. I'm gonna late pledge for that," right? And so it was neat to see that. It was neat to see trying to spread the love in the community.
Right. And that's actually your intent is kind of originally our intent too, was kind of melding worlds, and we kind of have a mix of audience of Reaper, GW type people, and so like GW people might not have you might not be as well known among like tabletop war gamers as you are among the Dungeons and Dragons side, or like kind of the Reaper side. But likewise David Soper, who who's an amazing artist, but only paints really GW figures. Probably most people in the Dungeon Dragon side don't know him either, and so it's a great way to bridge communities and stuff along those lines.
Yeah, no, I think it's cool. Yeah, and I'm kind of in my little niche, and so it's nice to put myself outside of that and see what other people are doing. So it's kind of cool.
I want to go back to something that or actually something you touched on before, and that was about asking, questions. You write your questions out, or you think about what you're going to do and planning. So how exactly do you do that when you're trying to paint? How are you able to do both of them?
I will have a little notepad of paper, and in a couple of episodes, I will accidentally show it on my palette cam, so you can see which questions I might be asking. Again, hashtags not professionals, but I'll just jot out 2 or 3 word questions. Ask about origin story, ask about how they got into the hobby, what's their favorite scale. If I know them and they painted, we had Tish Walter on, who likes a lot of historical stuff. She's done a lot of stuff for Reaper as well. I know she's really into English monarchy. So I asked, I was like, okay, tell me more about why you're into that, and what do you know? So especially if I'm friends with them on Facebook, I'll go in a lot of times to mine for questions I'll just look through their feed and see what they've done recently, what they're into, what their likes are. And then we get on air on Twitch or our streaming thing 30 minutes prior to going live, and then we'll just kind of talk a little bit, and I'll run a few questions just to make sure they're not I don't ask something they don't want me to ask. It hasn't been the case yet, but just make sure that we're hitting and plugging what we need to do as well.
So I have to ask this question. I know I'm going off script here, Dan. So I'm calling it audible. But one of the common things with your adjacent show is that we have this symbol that's in the right-hand corner of your Twitch about what it's get on the bus or get under it, or get the bus going, something along those lines.
Yeah, it's get on or get under. Yeah,
get on or get under. Now, let me ask this: how many times have you gone into a show going, "All right, I got one for Weeby. I'm going to throw Weeby under the bus"?
Most of the bus comments, at least, that come from me and for everybody, and really how this started is, so when you hang out with your friends and your buddies, you end up, you're close, and you learn things about folks, and you're going to give each other shit. You're going to joke with each other. And that's kind of where the bus thing came from. I like to give people a hard time. And the more hard time I give people, the more I joke with them, the more I like them. Because that's just, I feel comfortable with them, and I know they can take it, and that's just my personality. So I don't even know how, it wasn't ever intentional that it was going to be, getting the bus. It's basically getting the bus driven over. Oh yeah, you just got the bus driven over you. And it's just some offhanded comment or digging on you and everything. And then one thing led to another, then it, get on or get under. And then Jason took that little statement, and this was even prior to him joining the show, and he made that little graphic. And we might have some kind of other item related to the bus coming up. I'm hoping that we can have some kind of announcement maybe on Friday. We're doing a panel on sculpting Friday afternoon-ish. So look for, check that out. But we're going to have kind of a reveal on that. It's kind of neat, I think. Well, and if not, we'll have it on a future episode.
It's not just people, because I was in the Tom Mason Twitch watching, and he kind of threw a big name company under the bus too.
I had nothing to do with that, and that's Tom. I mean, just out of the blue. So yeah, what our motto is: our guests are immune from us driving the bus over them, but not totally immune. Like if I have Ron Hawkins, it's all bets are off.
He's not a guest. He doesn't count.
No, he wants to take over the show and do pubbing all the time on it. But no, he's fantastic. But yeah, we a big name company got thrown under the bus, but it was all in jest and all in love.
Okay, well, I guess you've already started a little bit of it, but maybe is there something on the show you haven't done that you wanted to? Maybe give us a sneak. Is there a way we can grab a sneak preview of something that's coming down the road besides the whole maybe something with the bus?
Well, the bus thing's out there. We're also outside of the bus. We are working on a few show specific kind of miniatures too. We have a TeePublic and a Zazzle store out there that has, t-shirts or whatever you want to make, mugs or anything off of it. And we haven't really garnered any revenue from it at all. I think we've had like 5 total purchases, but whatever we do, whenever we do get any money from it, we're going to take that and we're going to make some mugs, or I don't know, masks, or hopefully masks will be gone by that time, but whatever. And we're going to have those as giveaways.
Right.
No, you don't have any masks in Texas.
I'm in Colorado. So
Reaper's they're in Texas.
Yeah, Reaper's in Texas. No, I'm in Colorado, fortunately. We can handle cold weather.
See, there's a bus right under the bus.
That's kind of one example, I guess, of how the bus works. It's totally not planned, and that's the best bus accidents are, totally not planned, and the person doesn't see it coming, or the state doesn't see it coming, or whatever. Back to teasing. One thing that we've been really efforting doing, and Tom was really the first kind of taste of this because he has his own miniature lines, is we want to bring in some other companies, smaller companies, ones that might need a little more attention than the biggies out there. One that I am efforting that I have done a number of pieces for over the year. Actually, I was working on a few for him tonight, is Jim Ludwig with Dark Sword. So he is going to be a guest on our show within the next month or so. There's some new releases that are coming out. So I'm working on a few. Maybe we can, we're hoping to tie in those to the show when we do it and everything. But yeah, we'd like to bring more of those kind of folks on too. Maybe some folks outside of just the miniature world. Justin and I have been kind of talking about who else can we bring? Maybe some other Twitch streamers out there that are sort of connected. We had Frank from Nightheart Gaming on, and Frank does Nightheart Gaming does streaming on Twitch of D&D games, and he actually runs our Reaper Errant D&D show that's on every other Friday. So I had him on once, and I'd like to maybe figure out a way to get more kind of D&D inspired. We have a guy we work with, and good friend of everybody's, Joseph Wolf, who does he runs a lot of the D&D campaigns and stuff at ReaperCons, but he writes games and D&D style games and concepts. So if those folks that have ever been to ReaperCon and run through the original format games. They're kind of D&D inspired, but they're in different worlds and different settings. That's all out of the warped mind of Joseph Wolt. So we want to have him on. We had Izzy Collier on. Izzy is the 2D artist from that mainly does concept art for Reaper. So we're trying to not just focus on just the painters and the sculptors, but also who else can we bring in? We're working on a couple of folks. I probably can't mention their names. They're big into casting, and they do a lot of casting for a lot of small companies. So Jason's really close to them, so we're trying to get them on too, so we can talk about that process and how that all works.
Awesome.
And we've always kind of, if you haven't, those who haven't seen the show, it's me painting mainly. And I'm always going to be painting a Reaper figure and showing off something new and maybe showing off some new paints. There's another joke that's on the show is Reaper will retire a number of paints over the years, and I'll get some that are my favorites, and inevitably Ed retires them. And so I'll be painting on the show with the paint saying this is the best paint ever, and Rhonda or somebody will text in chat will say, oh yeah, Michael, that's retired. So nobody can get that. So it's teasing of retired paints at the time too. So yeah.
Nice. I like that. That's you can have this.
Yeah, it's not even intentional, and I don't even go to look. So yeah, there was paints that I'm like, oh, I really love this. This is going to be one of my go-tos, and I'll get a box of it. And so I don't ever have to worry about it again. So I didn't know that it retired. So it's like, this is the best paint. You guys should really try it. But yeah, so I do a lot of that. But we have been really trying to incorporate more visuals on our shows now that we have our guests on, and they're in video as well and streaming in, showing off their work too. And maybe at some point down the road, I might have a few people on, like few painters on, and we do some critiques of pieces. And we say this is kind of, cool. And this is what this is kind of what we look at. We just have to find which one of us wants to show our own piece, so the other people can tear it apart. So I'm sure I'll be the one that has to put it up there and have it all torn down and everything. But that's just part of it. It's part of the fun.
I'll give you a piece. You can tear my stuff apart. Now, granted, you're probably going to need more than your hour on Twitch just to tear, like one part apart. You're like,
no.
This is our first of 7 parts on why Mike's face painting skills are bad. It was our original motto. Our original motto was "We suck at painting, so you don't have to." So
I like that. I thought that was really good.
Well, better, braver, happier is much more positive,
Well, it is. You always have a motto behind the scenes, though.
Right.
It's kind of really driving. Yeah.
So not to switch gears, but let's continue talking about painting, or at least we can continue talking about painting. Unless that's what I just said. All right. So when I get really, really bored and I'm checking out Facebook and I stumble upon Clever Crow Studios, I notice there's a lot of underwater type of miniatures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about those projects?
I am a scuba diver. My wife and I are certified rescue divers. Not that we've ever done that. You just as you get into it, that's just one more thing that you can learn. But we really just got the bug of scuba diving a few years ago, and haven't been for the last 3 or 4 years, but used to go yearly on some trip, and we've been to the Caribbean and the South Pacific and places like that, and really just got a kick of being underwater and seeing all these cool things, and I don't know, when I got back, and every time I'd come back and the next miniatures I would end up buying or calling dibs from Ron or whatever would be aquatic related. And then so even with this last Kickstarter with Reaper, they had a whole Deep Dark Depths, I think was the name of the expansion in their Bones Kickstarter. And I would have painted every single one if Ron would have sent me all of them. I didn't get all of them, but I got a fair number of them. So yeah, I really I dig teals and purples. Those are some of my favorite colors to use. There's a little cult of teal and purple, I think, that a lot of painters love to fall into. But yeah, it's just something about that vibe, since it's something about how unique it is and different it is. I've told people before that the first time I went diving and went down into the coral, I was looking how all the different sea vegetation and coral and everything was formed really up close, and it reminded me of remember that the second Aliens movie, when they go into that base and all the aliens have formed all their cocoon stuff on the walls and everything.
Mhm.
I think James Cameron did that movie. I know he must be a huge underwater guy. Well, he did the Titanic thing or something. But yeah, it was really like, oh wow, that's where he got that inspiration from. That's really cool. And so just one thing led to another. And then underwater stuff, you can just go crazy with the colors, and you can be as bright as you want or as dull as you want. You can just go nuts on it. So yeah, it's a big interest of mine. It's a big focus.
Cool. So we were having a conversation a couple weeks ago, and I want to bring this up again because I think it's super important. Is when I look at miniatures or I think about miniatures, the one thing that does not come to mind is art direction
Mm.
and having someone direct how you paint.
hmm
How would you explain that? How could we continue that conversation about what art direction is as a commission painter?
Right.
And how is that a little bit different than if you just want to do something on your own?
So for me, I do 60, 70 plus percent of the work that I do is just my own stuff. But when I do commission work, I really just focus with two companies, primarily Reaper, but I also do, like I mentioned earlier, a number of stuff for Dark Sword. And so it's really the art direction in a lot of ways even starts with the miniature that I get assigned to work on. A lot of times, and I'll mention Jim Ludwig, he will call me or text me or message me an image of a miniature that he just got done. He goes, "This has your name all over it." And so with him, a lot of times it's he's reaching out saying, "This is the miniature I want you to paint." And because I know your style or the way you approach things would go well to this figure, which is always a huge compliment. So that's nice, and we'll generally have a conversation. And most of the time, the art direction is on more mood or overall vibe. With Ron Hawkins at Reaper, um, he will give me kind of a blank slate to run with. But if we do talk, he will say, okay, there's a lot of Cthulhu stuff that I will end up doing, bigger Cthulhu pieces. And he'll say, I want this to be a really dark vibe. I want this to be, there's Narlathep that I did for one or two Kickstarters ago. It was, I love painting the Cthulhu stuff. I just don't know the mythos as well as I probably should. But he wanted them dark, ruddy browns and tans and stuff like that. And that was really, he was like, that's the vibe I want. How you apply it is up to you. So yeah, that's usually the extent of the art direction that I get. Now, there's Narthrax was a dragon that I painted for Reaper Bones 2, maybe Bones 1 or Bones 2. And when I first got it, he sent it to me. He's like, "Can you paint this up? We're going to need it for box art eventually." I'm like, "Oh, great. That's awesome. Thanks. What are you thinking?" I'm like, "I think it should be blue." And that's what I'm feeling. He goes, I don't know. I'm thinking red." So I paint one red. And we all meet in Reaper. And I bring it with me and show it off. And Julie Guthrie, who sculpted it, is there. And he goes, "I think you're right. I think I want it blue." And I had spent I would say at least 30, 40 hours on this piece. I still got paid for it, so I'm not complaining. But I ended up, I mean, I don't paint the same miniature twice all that often. But yeah, I ended up painting the blue one, and the red one. You can see pictures on the Reaper gallery, but the red one lives with Julie Guthrie now. She was like, I want it. I have to have that. So it was really cool when the sculptor that sculpted it said, hey, I want that. And that's another thing. It's kind of a little bit off this question, but another big kick is a lot of times I will get assigned pieces through Ron in particular, because the sculptor has said, hey, Ron, I want Michael to paint that. That is super cool too. I love it.
Yeah,
You know,
that's awesome.
Rhonda gets the same stuff too. I mean, there was some stuff that Gene did. The little chibi dragons that he did. He told Ron, he's like, I want Rhonda painting these for me. I want Rhonda painting them all. And she was so super stoked and super excited about it. I thought that was really cool. So a lot of times we're all kind of a close knit of friends, and so it's neat that happens. So.
Now, do you guys ever go, "Aw, I wanted to paint that"?
All the time, all the time, all the time. I'm like, damn it, I wanted that. Yeah, I do that. I do because my eyes are too big for my stomach or painting hands, I should say, because there's so many things that I'm like, I call the joke. A lot of times the joke is, and it started on the Bones 5 updates. I just started calling dibs on everything.
Mhm.
Kind of as a joke, but I wanted to spark interest, and just it was my way of saying, instead of saying, "Oh, that's cool" all the time because everything's cool, saying, "Oh, that's so cool, I want to paint it." I'm calling dibs on it. So I by no means get anywhere close to all the miniatures that I call dibs on. If I get maybe 5% of them, that's awesome. But yeah, it's yeah, a lot. Jen Greenwald got to paint the mermans and mermaids from the Last Bones Kickstarter, and she killed them. She rocked them. They were awesome. Better than probably I could have done. But I'm still jealous. I wanted to paint them. So.
No, so just a real quick with the difference between like a Jim from Dark Sword and Ron from Reaper kind of question. When we talked originally in the first episode that we did, we talked about how you did Mossbeard Tree Man, and you had added all these little squirrels and birds and stuff to it, and Ron nixed those. Right now, would Jim let you put squirrels and birds on a Tree Man?
No. Yeah. Usually, and in most cases, and I learned my lesson, I think, with that one was, when you're doing a studio model, you need to keep it as clean to what the person is going to buy as possible. I like to do a lot of basing stuff, and for the longest time, yeah, Jim was like, no, I don't want any basing. Don't give me any basing stuff, because I want to be able to sell this. Then he's kind of backed off on a little bit, and I can add some stuff as long as it's still on a gaming style base. I have a little more leeway with Ron at times, depending on what the figure is and what it's for. Sometimes I will just go ahead and do it. There's Reaper virtual cons coming up right now, and this weekend, March 4th, 5th, I don't know, it's Friday. And there's a 70 millimeter sculpt that Gene Van Horn did, a Cyber Chick, and I got a copy of it, and I'm painting it up for Reaper, but I made this nice base behind it and wall and everything and textures and all that stuff that aren't part of the miniature thing at all. And Ron said, "Great base. Not sure I wanted it, but great base."
So is that 70 millimeter figure, is that going to be available to purchase?
I think so. I think
hope so.
all are. I think they're all going to be. The rest of the figures are in the new Bones USA material, so it's a firmer, better definition, kind of grayish scale Bones material. But yeah, this is one of their first 70 millimeter metal figures they've done in quite a while. They have a lot of Sophies from back in the day, but yeah, she's really super cool. Yeah.
I have two of their 54 millimeter, the female Evil Knight and Good Knight, and those are beautiful. Yeah, I haven't paint. I want to paint them, but they're on my list. But yeah, those are. So I'm interested to see what Reaper does on a larger scale, because those are beautiful in the 54 millimeter levels too.
Yeah, and they mostly do 30 millimeter, 28 millimeter, kind of 32 millimeter, sort of around that scale. But they have if you go in and mine, it'll all, of course, be metal. They've got some nice 54s. They have a couple of pieces sculpted by Werner von Klock and Monique, and there's another one. Fantastic pieces. They're really cool. They're kind of lost little gems within their category, their catalog, I should say.
Right. I think one of them's Fernari the Crusader, and I cannot
Mm-hmm.
think of the anti-paladin woman who
Yeah.
I can't think
With
of
the
her
big
name.
flowing robes and everything. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and she's holding her sword straight out, like
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
next, you know.
Yeah, she's super cool. Yeah, she's really cool too. We've always pushed them to Rhonda and I and other painters have said you need to do more 54s, but their niche is the gamers. So and that scale, the 54 scale is just, and it becomes, metal at that scale isn't cheap these days. So
No, absolutely not. And yeah, that's when you said metal 70 millimeter. I'm like, ooh,
yeah,
that's gonna hurt the wallet.
I know. Everything's resin or hard plastic these days. That I've had an opportunity to do some metal figures, and it was almost I had to find my drill bits and my files for the first time in quite a while. Instead of just using the X-Acto blade to scrape off the mold lines from resin, to actually find those diamond files again on the old metal figures, which back in the day, that's all you had to paint were metal figures.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting now to see Reaper's brought so many new people into the hobby that their only real exposure has been their bones figures, their plastic figures. And so I've seen comments on the forums and on their Facebook pages and whatnot. I finally worked my way up to where I'm going to be painting a metal figure. So that this is like the next step for them is it's like real it's interesting because back in the day that's all there were metal figures.
That's pretty funny because it's like,
Yeah.
hey, there's some plastic figures out there. I'm gonna work my way up to them.
Exactly. Well, I remember painting metal figures and then resin came out, and resin was a little more costly, but it had just finer, sharper, crisper detail, and they were easier to clean and I remember back in the day going, ooh, I'm gonna go get my first resin figure. I'm gonna paint my first resin.
Nice. I hate metal. I hate metal miniatures with a passion. I chip them. You name the thing that you're not supposed to do to a metal miniature, and I'm gonna do it just because that's how I roll. And I hate prepping miniatures. So yeah.
I hate prepping miniatures too. It's one of the sometimes it can be a little cathartic working on them, but I just want to get to the painting part. And inevitably, I am horrible at catching all the mold lines.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go back and touch things up all the time because I've missed one mold line or another.
I'm so glad I'm not the only person.
Yeah.
My first competition piece I ever handed in, as I handed it in, I saw a mold line on the foot, and I went, seriously?
Right.
I spent how many hours on this, and there's a mold line. And of course, the first thing was told to me by one of the judges, you missed a mold line on the foot. I'm like, I was hoping nobody would notice.
I know. It's always somebody else that finds them. You could be staring at that miniature for 20, 30 hours and you wouldn't see it. And then you put it out and that's first thing somebody else sees.
Or you take a picture of it and you're like, what in the world? I can't submit this.
Exactly.
For sure.
All right. So Michael, we talked about a couple of things you would have liked doing, and things figures you've enjoyed. So what do you have on your desk now, and what you're looking forward to doing?
Well, I have. I think I mentioned earlier a few pieces for Dark Sword. So they are. Without giving too much away, because Jim likes to kind of keep things secret until they actually get time for release. They are homages to Jim and I have had a lot of conversations on old Grenadier figures, and I mean that's the Grenadier figures next to the Rail Partha, but really for me, the Grenadier figures back in the day are really what hooked me. I just love them. I still have a bunch of the old original ones. So with not tipping which ones. There's a few that I approached Jim with even and said, hey, can do you want to do these? Are you open to doing that? Because I know he's a huge fan of those other ones too. So they're sculpted by Bobby Jackson. That's a hint. But yeah, they're I'm super excited about them. They're really cool. So those are my real commission pieces. So you guys have heard of Black Crow Miniatures? They're
Yeah.
out of Europe somewhere.
Mhm.
I've made a couple of purchases with them. And so those are my next personal projects. And I have a Mindwork Games figure, the little post-apocalyptic guy. I can't think of his name right now. So usually when I'm doing my own things on non-commission related pieces, I'm usually grabbing some either a European resin that I, some 54, 70 millimeter figure, just so I can just spend time on it. And in most cases, there I have like 8 or 9 of those in various stages, because I'll pick one up, work on it a while, pick one up and work on another one. I finished up a couple of confrontation pieces for my own self within the last couple of months. A couple of Wolfens, a Wolfen Prowler, and I just posted up some pictures this week of a Wolfen Zombie. So I like to occasionally try to go back and forth where I want to pay homage to the old sculpts, and Confrontation really isn't as old as you could go, but they've been gone for a while, and they just produce some great stuff. I have a couple of Grenadier things that I'd like to paint too. I might even paint the Grenadier pieces that were the homage to the ones that Jim are doing too, so you can kind of see the difference in how time has progressed, which it has drastically. what they can do now compared to what they were able to do, and a lot of times they were restricted back in the day to just being able to cast, and most of those pieces needed to be single pieces, where now they don't have to be. They can be multi-part pieces, like we all know painfully, having to assemble those massively a single character is in 10 pieces. Give me a freaking break. Right. That's one of the reasons why I stay away from a few companies.
Yeah, I understand that. But you kind of set me up for my next question there, because both you and I have been are fans of the Mindwork game sculpts. Well, most of them. And your Shroom Man, by the way, is just absolutely amazing. It's one I've looked at so many different times, because you had sent me some pictures of it, and I've always scrolled back up to look at it.
Thanks.
But we both bought the new 75 millimeter puppeteer. Now, I shied away from asking this question before because I couldn't think of how to ask it. But when I look at it, I have to admit I'm a bit intimidated by it. As an incredibly accomplished painter like yourself, are there models out there that make you feel kind of the same way, or at least make you go, okay, I really want to paint that, but I need to put that off for a little bit?
Oh, totally. I have more than a few figures that I've bought going, I have to have that. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it yet, but it'll come. But, and those that are like, oh yeah, this is just the greatest thing. I want to paint this, but I don't know the paint scheme yet. I don't have the vibe. And for me, I like to try to, whenever possible, create little bases and scenes around them. So one of the reasons why that Mindwork Games post-apocalyptic guy, I haven't finished him, is I haven't fully realized his base yet. And so for a lot of pieces for me, I even might get started on them, but they may not get finished until I can figure out the total scene for them yet. But yeah, no, I'm with you. Even that puppeteer, I saw it. I have the original puppeteer from them, but I haven't painted that one either. But I have the big one, and for me, I took it out of the box. Of course, I always open up all the boxes and look through it and dream and imagine. But I don't have the scene yet in my mind what I want to do. So as soon as that comes to me, then I'll start painting it. A lot of times. So which sometimes helps. Sometimes I will shy away from a full figure and just go to a bust, because you don't necessarily have to have an elaborate base with a bust. Most of the times you don't. So sometimes it's just like, oh, I can just paint here, and I don't have to worry about the story and the composition or anything like that.
Yeah, I've got one on you there. I did actually paint my original, the original one, because I did it for a gift for somebody. But my bet is you will probably start into your puppeteer long. I think I had that for 5 years before it was the first resin mini I bought. So
yeah, no, he's on the list. It's just, that inspiration light's got to ignite, and then so that's got to hit before I can really continue on with it for my personal stuff. Yeah.
No, I'm right with you. And always for me, it's easier to paint when I have a story in my head for the figure. Like if I can think of like the whole story behind what they're doing, why are they on that mountain, why are they doing this, then typically the painting process is much faster.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I don't go to as many cons as I used to these last few years. Even
nobody does.
Yeah, well, obviously, I will go to ReaperCon and been to Gen Con a number of years ago. Went to Adepticon, what have you. But really, the last few years prior to pandemic has been some local cons here in Colorado and then ReaperCon. So I tend to not paint for the competition. I tend to just paint for myself. And when the competition rolls around, I'm like, okay, what have I done lately that I'm most proud of? And I throw that in the little box and go to the con. That's for me. And then enter in whatever categories are there. And usually I've painted enough things where I can just automatically hit the categories that I need to. But yeah, it's just, I try not to paint specifically for individual categories and competitions anymore. It's just not as fun for me.
So when you do paint these, what are you looking for? I know we've talked about when you're probably sitting around at a table, or now someone's showing you something online when you're doing a commission for a company. But what really draws you to something that you want to do just for yourself?
How cool it is!
Cool factor, okay.
I mean, it really is. It really is. It's like I bought another thing that I picked up from Black Crow was Eldoran. He's an elf warrior in full plate with he's standing on a dragon head. He's probably one of the most recent ones that I purchased on my own, just for my own personal stuff. And I was really impressed with the Studio Painter's version of non-metal metal. I've been working on that as one of my skill sets. I've done shaded metallics for years and taught a number of classes on it and kind of maybe known for that. But I've really been trying to take what I ended up incorporating and developing my style from traditional shaded metallics into non-metal metal. And so this piece, not only the studio paint job spoke to me, but just the way the sculpt is. And I bought it mainly because there's a lot of armor on this elf, and I want to work on that. Was one of the big pieces. So and then a lot of times, again, it's cool factor. Oh, that's a cool wizard bust. I want to get that. Or, there's inevitably, we all have piles of miniatures that were just like, oh my God, that's the coolest thing ever. But realizing after purchase, arriving home, are they going to make it out of the box? Are they going to make it to final realization of paint? Those are the major steps.
Yeah, I think we all suffer from that.
Yeah.
Well, except for Dan. Dan doesn't have a pile of gray. He's at least primed everything.
Yeah, I primed all my stuff. It's all primed black.
Oh wow!
So I have, like, say, my 30K Dark Angels, my black Eldar, and what else do I have? That's Legion of Damned, but they have a little bit of red and orange in there, but they're all black. Yeah, so pretty much all my armies are black now. Until I can find another color primer I like, and I'll just start using that army.
We've kind of touched on this a little bit as we've gone through, but recently we did our anniversary show, and we kind of talked about the things that are what kind of picked highlights from what artists had said to us about the better, braver, happier process in the painting journey. And one of the things that you said that really impacted me, and it kind of like honestly, it's a more realization almost on a daily basis, was that when you take a class, and this also kind of triggered the thought from, you talked about your shaded metallics class, which I've taken online, which is fantastic if anybody else gets a chance to take it, is that going into that class and basically forgetting what you know and focusing on what the teacher is trying to show you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to see if we could talk a little bit more about kind of more about that process. I know because it's hard. Like, it's really funny. I took this class from Roman LaPlante that was 3 days long, and I really, coming out of that, should have at least been a 15 to 20% better painter just from the being next to Roman.
Yeah, just for signing up and paying the money. You should that should be an automatic improvement. Yeah, right.
Absolutely. Just being in his presence. When he poured a bottle of wash on a model and then started moving it around with his fingers, I was like, I'm in. Sign me up for your church. That's exactly how I want to paint. Sloppy and fun. But I feel like I wasted that class because I was trying to do stuff that I thought I already knew how to do, which I didn't. And maybe not on a conscious level fighting it, but kind of on a subconscious level thinking I knew how to do something I didn't and not listening. Can you give us any advice on how to kind of break out of that habit, or as somebody who teaches classes, something that a student can focus on to kind of break those habits?
When I teach, and even when I take a class, when I teach, I'm like, okay, you're here to learn a new technique. Try to just put aside everything you think you know about this technique and listen. And try to absorb and ask me questions and try this new technique and wait till later to take this technique and incorporate it into your skill set. That is the biggest thing. I joke. I'm like, look, if you guys get this right off the bat, I'm kicking you out of this class because I want you to suck initially at this because you're learning something new. I'll joke, is if I see anybody doing a really good job initially, you're gonna have to leave, and we'll refund your money or whatever. And that's never happened, of course. But it's just letting go and don't try to show off. Don't try to show that you're good in the class. Let the teacher show you what they're doing and go from there. I took a class with Sergio Calvo Rubio, and he just blew my mind. I took a class from Alfonso. He blew my mind. And I really went into both of those classes trying to heed my advice as much as possible. Just let go and absorb what they're saying. And it's particularly I was after Alfonso's class, I actually felt like he hurt my painting more than he helped it after the class. The color theory and the application of it, it really made me have to stop and think about how I was using color and how I was using complementaries and tertiaries and bringing in and using colors within a range, within a skin tone, newer colors or whatever. And it stymied me for a month or so as my brain processed it through. And the same thing kind of happened with Sergio's class. He just went over a lot of his textures and his non-metal metal and stuff. And it took me a good few months to absorb it. And I thought I was getting it in the class. I took good notes in the class. And I could refer and follow up to, and the miniature from the class. I'm like, yeah, okay. I tried to emulate what he was doing and what he was teaching. And then with that, my other advice is let go as you go in, let them feel it's you've paid the money. You have your total right to suck in the class, just as long as you're trying to learn. And then if you've paid all that money for the weekend workshop, or, you've gone to one of the cons and you've taken a 2-hour class, the thing is, after you've taken that class, practice it that night, that afternoon, the next day, before it totally leaves you. Even you get out of that class and they've taught you skin tones or blending or whatever, if you've got a chance to go sit down and practice that a little bit more, just keep that repetition, get that muscle memory. And I think the key thing is there's always that joke of, people take the classes and they're a famous painter and they're automatically going to get better. Yeah, you're learning their techniques, and you're learning the way that their brain, you're watching the way their brain processes it and applies it. Your brain works differently, so you're going to have to translate that into how your brain thinks and then apply it. So it's going to take some time. And you may have some setbacks in it, but inevitably, if you keep pushing towards it, you're going to get there, and you're going to see great results.
Yeah, I know, and it's one of those things too that when we had Alfonso on the show before the interview started, he actually went into this diatribe about before we even started, he was like, sometimes it may take 3 years, you might be 3 years down the road and go, oh, I understand what that guy said now, like it may take a while to unpack everything that you learn in a weekend workshop. So
100% agree with that. Yeah, I was fortunate enough when he came to visit us in Colorado. I got spend some time chauffeuring him around and everything, and we had some conversations, a lot of conversations about that. But yeah, he said the same kind of stuff, and it really, that kind of advice hit home. And it is really cool to meet people from other parts of the world and learn their styles and learn how their approach to things. Alfonso and Sergio grew up in that world, to grow up and I believe they're in Barcelona, to grow up around that history and that art is just awesome. Now, with that said, when the Europeans come over, definitely sign up for the classes and everything. But don't forget your American painters here too.
Oh yeah,
there's some fantastic painters out there that take a weekend workshop with them, or go to the cons and take a 2-hour class. I think sometimes a 2-hour class to learn and digest that little snippet in a lot of times is better than a weekend workshop where you may just be all over consumed, and they may have hit 5 things, but you were really only able to retain 2 of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you raise a really good point in that sometimes those of us in the mini painting world get fascinated with like kind of the foreign painters because they are amazing. And some of if you have a conversation with Alfonso or Mark Mascalons or Sergio, they're super wonderful, super community people, and so they're easy to get wrapped up in. But there are so many amazing painters. I mean, just what we've had on our show here, but including you, Sam Lenz, Vince Venturella, there's so many, Kenny Boucher, amazing American, Kathy Wapple, I can keep listing them because of how many, there's a lot of talent here in the U.S., even in Eric Swinson.
Yeah, especially Eric. Yeah, he's fantastic. Yeah.
Dan was sat next to him in the Sergio class. He didn't really know who he was at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, we just started shooting a breeze, and it was pretty freaking cool. And then and then to run into him the next year and and see he's done this fabulous freaking work, and then he gets to travel around the world and showcase his cool art and everything. It was
he won Best in Show that year at Nova.
Yeah, and then
Capital Palette. Yeah.
Yep. I can't remember. I wish I could remember the name of that freaking miniature.
It was it's a Huntress from Privateer Press.
There you go. It's a Huntress. That's right.
Yeah, because it was a mini crate exclusive. Anyway, so besides what you're absolutely right. There's so many amazing. Shoshi Bauer is another one who does a Twitch as well. That was our very first guest. So yeah, you're right, Michael. European painters are amazing, but we also have a lot of good homegrown stuff here in America.
Yeah, totally.
For sure. Dan's lost again.
I am. So
so on the kind of same thought.
No, process. But I think he kind of answered the question that I was getting ready to ask about, like, what kind of advice do you have to our listeners and to your and maybe even to your guests and listeners on how to be a better, braver, happier painter?
Enjoy it. As simple as that. We all got into this hobby because we thought, oh, that's cool. I like these little toys. I want to paint them. And remember, that's why we got into it. It becomes, and a lot of us are competitive by nature, and we want to enter and get better and progress, and then enter competitions and win things and win trophies and paint for companies and get recognition and everything. That's great. That's awesome. I've gone down that road, but I've also gone down the road of taking things too seriously and forgetting the enjoyment of it. And that's when I start feeling like too much pressure or thinking like this, I start losing the joy, is when my work suffers, and my enjoyment and my engagement in the work suffers. There's been times that I've lost focus and had to put the brushes down for a couple months and just say, take a break. And if that's the case, feel free to take a break. It's not anything awful. And we've talked about this on the Crow's Nest with more than a few of the guests. It's a running question of mine with folks, is imposter syndrome. Do you feel it? And does it affect you? And, it simply is, do you feel like I am not really as good as people think I am? I suck. Whatever it is. And to a person, everybody we've talked to has had that feeling. So I think and I like to talk about it on that show because, of course, I've gone through that. I've gone, oh my God, I'm gonna wake up one day and they're all gonna figure out that I really suck. That I'm really a hack at what I'm doing here. And I like to talk about that on the show because I want everybody else to see, because I've had these conversations with, my friends that I've met through the hobby, and I want everybody else to hear too. Yeah, it's not just you going that you have these feelings. All of this is our art. This is what we're expressing our feelings and stuff about. You're exposing yourself when you do that. So it's inevitable that you're gonna feel a little twinge sometimes, like, and you're exposed. But remember, it's fun, and that's why you did it. And judging and entering competitions and all that stuff is great, but at the end of the day, it should be fun. And if the judges or whatever it is don't like your piece and you love it, then that's what's important.
That's true. I can think of a million examples of people being upset about feedback and it being negative and taking it personally, when really we're supposed to be just using that to learn how to grow and how to become better painters.
Totally.
Yeah, it's like the person that puts a Facebook post up and says CNC welcome, but that's not really what they want. They want validation.
Yeah, I don't know if I can't remember whether we talked about that last time or not, but yeah.
A little bit, yeah. We got into a little bit onto it, yeah.
Yeah, it's always, kind of a balance of, if someone asks me what they think, I try to figure what I think of a piece. I'm just trying to gauge from them how much they want to know. And if I have been able to talk to them before, I will ask, so what level of critique would you like? Do you want me to go full bore on you, or and I'll only ask that question when I know that the answer is going to be yes. They want me to give them an in-depth critique, because otherwise, right. Sometimes there's those folks that they just want you to say that's cool, and I get it. That's awesome, because that's their part of their hobby. They want to show off. Hey, I finished this thing. That's great. That's awesome. Is that the world's greatest painted miniature ever? No, but that wasn't their intent, and they had fun with it. So to them, that should be the world's greatest miniature, and I think it's awesome.
I know you're invaluable to me. I think like the last 5 projects I've worked on have Michael Proctor guidance on them, which is much appreciated.
Happy to help. Yeah.
You're really good at it. No, I mean, it's wonderful to have another set of eyes to, it's good to have you there, because, I thought I was my own worst critic, and then I met Dan, and then my wife heard what Dan says and said, hold her beer. So,
That's funny. And I think the key thing that I love it when people reach out to me. If anybody listening, they see my stuff, I've talked to you or whatever. If you ever want any feedback, just reach out to me via Facebook. I'm always happy to give whatever advice I can. But like for you, for instance, I see where you're going, and I'm just trying to help you get where I see that you're going. And that's my advice when I'm trying to give critiques or whatever. I'm trying to figure out what's their direction, what's their intent, where's their style leading them towards, and trying to help push them in
Mm-hmm.
that direction. I think the thing sometimes with critiques I've seen with other folks is they're giving a critique to somebody and telling them to do things that it doesn't fit within how they paint or how they communicate with paint. This is
Right.
not to be too trippy with that, but yeah. And so figure out where they're going and try to help them along that path. And then, so find, if you're looking for inspiration from folks, for me, for instance, I am just drawn to Sergio's stuff. I just am enamored by his stuff. I just look at what he's got on and I was like, that's cool. That speaks to me. I want to more emulate what he's doing, not copy, but emulate, so I can, because I don't have his technical skills, but I can put what he's doing, hopefully, and put it into my skill set.
Yeah, and I have to say thank you, because I know that you've been a part of my improvement in painting. I think recently, probably in the last like 3 or 4 months, I felt like kind of a jump in my painting, and so I have to say thank you to you for all your advice and guidance on that.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. That's part of it. It's giving back. It's having fun. It's helping other people along, because all of us were starting and during the process at one place or another. And then there's always going to be people further ahead of you that, I've got folks that I'm reaching out to all the time. What do you think about this? What am I doing wrong here? Why isn't this working? Why does this look stupid? Help me understand why I'm not pulling this off, so it's good to have it. And that's a big encouragement too, is have your core, and I know I'm pretty positive we talked about this before, but
Mm-hmm.
have your core group of folks, that your friends that you feel comfortable reaching out to, and they're giving you honest feedback and not like Dan and just killing your spirit.
I'm trying to bring everybody down to my level of poor spirit and.
Yeah, I thought I'd reintroduce the bus there for a second.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I don't want to keep you too much longer, Mike. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show a second time, being a part of the
Awesome.
Listening to Paint Dry family, and being a good friend. Why don't you remind us of your Twitch time?
Okay, Twitch time is Tuesdays at 5 o'clock Central Time on the Reaper Miniatures Twitch channel. Look for the Crow's Nest. So we do that every Tuesday, and then every other Friday at 6 p.m. Central Time on the Reaper Twitch channel, we do Reaper Errant. And it's not a painting show, it's just the Reaper sculptors and painters hanging out with Frank from Nightheart Gaming, and we're doing a D&D campaign. And I pub it all the time just because it's a blast. Now, I'm not necessarily the first person. Go ahead.
DM'd by Jesus. So.
Yeah, it's DM'd by Jesus. Frank Schumacher. Yeah, he has long flowing hair. He has a good hairband 80s hair kind of thing look going. Yeah, he's fantastic, and I have a hard time personally watching other people playing D&D, but I have a blast playing it myself. So I try to drag people over there if they can. So I want to keep it going. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, man.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. Take care. You have a great night, guys.
Dan and I would like to thank Michael Proctor of Clever Crow Studios for joining us again. It's always great to have him on the show. He's become a great friend. Follow him on Instagram and Facebook at Clever Crow Studios. You can watch him on Twitch on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Remember, we'll be his guests on Tuesday, April 13th. Come join in the shenanigans as Dan and I compete to see how often we can throw each other under the bus. And just as a reminder, that show is on the Reaper Twitch channel.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Listening to Paint Dry, or Twitter at Dry Painting. We also have a YouTube channel, which is titled Listening to Paint Dry with Mike and Dan. Please like, subscribe, or follow us wherever you get your podcast. And if you could leave us a good review, that would be really helpful to the show.
Yeah, send us an email at listeningtopaintdry@gmail.com. Tell us what you're working on. And if you saw us on Tuesday, April 13th, let us know how we did, or, make fun of us. That's all good. We'll take those too. Just so you know, it's time to get on the bus and become a better, braver, happier painter. Until next time.
See ya.
Listening to Paint Dry with Mike and Dan is a production of LTPTWMD. All rights reserved. No portion of this recording may be used without the express written consent of the host. The music is Death by a Thousand Questions by Springtide. Download from the Free Music Archive on a non-commercial attribution share-alike basis. All views and opinions expressed in the show are solely the views and opinions of the person who said them. All celebrity voices, if any, were impersonated and done so poorly.